I am at my secret destination. And my secret destination, surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, is the Tunku Abdul Rahman Memorial. So here's the sign, the Memorial Tunku Abdul Rahman Putra. And there's also a memorial to Tun Hussein On and Memorial Negarawan. But I think today I'm only going to the Abdul Rahman one. And if you don't know, I will tell you a little bit. I've been here twice before. This is my third visit that I can remember. And Tunku Abdul Rahman is considered the father of Malaysia. And he was instrumental in the independence movement. And he was the key figure driving the independence movement so that the Federation of Malaya, a British colony, achieved its independence tomorrow in 1957. So on August 31st, 1957, the Federation of Malaya became independent from the British, and it became its own completely free and independent country. And this man was, as I said, instrumental in that process, and he was Malaysia's first prime minister when it became an independent country. And tomorrow, August 31st, is Hari Merdeka, basically Malaysia's Independence Day. And there's a huge celebration happening all across the country. Here, the major one used to take place in Kuala Lumpur at Merdeka Square, but they've moved it. It now takes place at Putrajaya. So a lot of people early tomorrow morning will be heading to Putrajaya, and then they will be, there to see the parade, basically a big parade celebrating Independence Day in Putrajaya. But I decided to celebrate it in my own way, go to a museum. As I said, I've been here before, and in fact I shot a long and detailed video here before. So today I'm not going to document this place the way I normally would. I'm just coming here to refresh my memory, just so that I can appreciate the celebration and Malaysia's Independence Day, just so that I have the background to understand what happened. And I thought the best way to do that, other than reading a Wikipedia page, is to come to the Tunku Abdul Rahman Memorial. And I'm just going up the steps and up the road here. And I believe this is where he lived. So I believe the British resident lived here originally, and then after independence, the first Malaysian Prime Minister, Tunku, he lived here. That was his house, and the memorial building is connected to it. It's over here. And it's quite an extensive memorial. It's essentially a very large and very detailed museum, and details the life history of the Tunku, and of course the history of Malaysia itself. And one reason I'm doing this is that I have a particular interest in independence stories. I guess it goes all the way back to my university days, because in university, I think I'm going to sit down for just a minute. In university, I studied international development. And as part of that program, we studied a lot of developing countries in Africa, South America, in Asia. And this was all before the economies of Southeast Asia exploded. So it was a very different world decades ago when I went to university. And a lot of the countries in Asia, they were considered developing countries at the time. They were not the economic powerhouses that they are today. So I studied the independence movements all across Africa, South America, and Asia. And it made a big impression on me, because the independence movement of all of the European colonies shaped the world I was living in. So the world we live in today, you trace back so many things happening now. It goes all the way back to their history as colonies of European powers and then achieving independence. So if you understand that process, you understand these countries a lot better. And over the years, I've developed a certain number of themes that are part of the independence movements. So for example, there's the theme of World War II, because World War II was the catalyst for all the independence movements. Because before World War II, most of the world was divided up into colonies of Britain, France, the various European powers. But then, because of World War II, they all lost their grip on these places. So their presence in those countries was weakened because they were busy fighting a war in Europe. And of course, they were fighting the Japanese. The Japanese were occupying all these countries in Asia that were European colonies. So the European powers were kicked out because they had to fight on the home front. They lost a lot of economic power, they lost a lot of military power, and then the Japanese were there. Basically, they took over. And then when World War II ended with the defeat of the Japanese and the Germans, well, the European powers tried to move back in. They tried to get their colonies back. But of course, the local people, took advantage of this power vacuum, and that's when all the independence movements kicked in. And basically, the entire developing world became independent at that time, and Malaysia was one of those countries because, well, it wasn't Malaysia back then. You get tripped up by the names all the time. It was the Federation of Malaya back then, the British possession. And then in 1957, August 31st, tomorrow, then it became the Independent Federation of Malaya. But even in 1957, it wasn't Malaysia yet. So Malaysia has a little bit of a complicated history. In fact, they have two Independence Days. August 31st, tomorrow, is Hari Merdeka, Independence Day. But then on September 16th, they celebrate again, and that's Malaysia Day. Because in 1963, September 16th, that's when Malaysia as we know it today was formed. Because you had the Federation of Malaya, and then they were joined by Singapore, Sabah, and Sarawak. So you had the Federation of Malaya plus Singapore plus Sabah plus Sarawak, and those together became the modern country of Malaysia. And that is Malaysia Day, September 16th. So they celebrate two Independence Days. Very lucky people. But of course, in 1965, Singapore was kicked out and became a separate country, a city-state on its own. That was in 1965. So then the final form of modern Malaysia, as we know it today, really didn't come into focus until 1965. And that's when we have Malaysia as it exists today. So there's kind of like three dates. You've got August 31st, 1957, then you've got September 16th, 1963, and then a date in 1965 when Singapore was kicked out, before you finally get to modern day Malaysia. But tomorrow, Independence Day really is the big one. They just kind of celebrate all of it all at one time. And August 31st is Independence Day, Hari Merdeka. So what I was saying is that after World War II, again, 1957 is when the Federation of Malaya achieved its independence. But getting that independence was a long process, starting after World War II, when the war ended, all the way up to 1957. And Malaysia had a peaceful independence movement for the most part. And that's another theme of independence movements around the world. I talked about how it all happened after World War II. But you also have this idea that the colonial powers created the seeds of their own destruction. Because when all these countries were colonies, they took the best and the brightest of that population, and a lot of them were given scholarships to study at universities in London and Paris, places like that. And so what happens is you get all these people from Malaya studying abroad in Europe. They're all from Malaya, and they all get together at university and they form these clubs and these movements, and those are quite often the beginning of the independence movement. So in fact, you get Britain, they take all of these intelligent young people from Malaya, take them to university in London, and that group of educated people, they eventually start the independence movement, and they are actually the future leaders of the independent country later on. So in fact, all these colonial powers, they educated the people who ended up kicking them out and forming a new government, an independent government. So they kind of sowed the seeds of their own destruction that way. And Tunku was one of those, where he was educated in Malaya, but he was also educated abroad. And that's when the whole independence movement started. He networked with all these other people from Malaya, and then they formed society, like independence clubs and movements, and the seeds of independence were born back then. Haven't gone into the memorial just yet. GoPro battery died. And a little technology note. Yesterday or the day before, I went out shopping because all my GoPro batteries are swelling up and basically I can't use them anymore. And I bought a couple of like third-party batteries from a company called Veloso. And they're supposed to be the equivalent of the GoPro Enduro batteries. They have the white pattern on it, same as Enduro. So they're supposed to be like high-powered, longer-lasting, and they're about half the price of official GoPro batteries, but I thought I'd give them a try. My sense is they don't last nearly as long as the GoPro batteries, but at the same time, since the GoPro batteries swell up and you have to replace them constantly, it's just a giant money churn, and I'm tired of paying so much money for GoPro batteries. So, Veloso batteries. The other theme that I was thinking about when it comes to independence movements is around the world, there were two basic patterns. There was like a peaceful independence movement and then a violent one where there's like a big war. The French had a lot of wars with their former colonies, long, bloody wars. Luckily, when it comes to Malaya and then Malaysia, it was more or less a peaceful transition, with one caveat which gets a little bit confusing. But essentially it was a long, polite, non-violent process of meetings and conferences and treaties and agreements, lots of officials getting together and shaping out what this transfer of power was going to be like, where Malaya went from being a colony of Britain to being a free country. And it was done peacefully. And I really like that idea. I think I can relate to Malaysia, partially because Canada is very similar to that. Canada makes me laugh, actually, because we are so laid back when it comes to these things. People around the world get so excited about their independence wars and how they defeated their oppressors and fought against them and won, and they have all these heroic events in their past. And in Canada, we don't really have any of that. My sense is that we sat down with the British and we had a cup of tea and we had a nice little chat. And by the end of it, we're like, oh yeah, let's make Canada independent. But in fact, Canada didn't really become independent, I don't think, until 1982, like fully independent country. It's really quite, I think most Canadians don't even know that. I pulled together a couple of notes just so I have it clear in my head. So I think most people would say, most Canadians would say that Canada became independent in 1867. That's our independence year. But in fact, it isn't really, because we became a dominion. They just sort of changed the name of what we were called. We were now a dominion of the British Empire, meaning we governed ourselves domestically, but we had no control over our foreign policy. We were still part of Britain as far as everything important was concerned. And then in 1931, I didn't even know this, there was something called the Statute of Westminster. And at that time, 1931, Canada got control over its own laws and foreign policy. But even then, we couldn't change our constitution. Like the Americans, their independence entirely based on their constitution, their Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They're very, very proud of that. Canada, for decades and decades and decades, even after we kind of became independent, we still had no control over our own constitution. The British controlled our constitution. And finally, I remember this, I was young at the time, I remember this happening. In 1982, there was the Constitution Act, and Canada finally had control, full sovereignty. So in fact, Canada has not even been a fully sovereign country until 1982, when we finally had control over domestic affairs, foreign policy, and our Constitution. Up until 1982, we didn't. And my feeling is we weren't even bothered by that. Like if someone said to me in 1975, you know, you're still controlled by the UK, you're still part of the British Empire, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Does that affect me? No, I still have to go to high school, and I got to do this, and I got to cut the grass. I mean, I don't care. So I don't think Canadians were that bothered by it, but eventually we did get control of our constitution as well. And then even today, we're still part of the Commonwealth, just as Malaysia is. So we have a king, King Charles III. He is also the King of Canada. The monarchy is our monarchy as well. And I think most Canadians, we're cool with that. We're like, yeah, sure, why not? It's fun to have a king, and we don't get uptight about these things. And I think Malaysians are a little bit easygoing in the same way, and their independence was negotiated over a cup of tea with the British. Not to say that they didn't have tough negotiators and push for their rights, and it wasn't I'm not saying it wasn't a struggle, but at the same time, it wasn't a war for independence, which I kind of like. The one caveat that I mentioned, and this often gets ignored, it kind of gets pushed aside, is that there was also the emergency. So there was fighting associated with the emergency, which was a communist insurgency against the British rulers of Malaya. And the British and with Malay forces were fighting an actual war against a communist insurgency. And the communists saw themselves as an independence movement fighting for their independence against Britain. So it was almost like there were two independence struggles going on at the same time. There was a communist insurgency fighting with weapons and bombs and killing people. And then there were the calm, peaceful negotiations over tea. And in the end, the emergency is sort of ignored as an independence movement because they weren't successful. They were defeated, and Malaysia became independent through the negotiating process. They were the ones who won in the end. So that story is Malaysia's independence story, as far as I understand things. So that is the story as I know it, and now I'm going to walk through the Tunku Abdul Rahman Memorial. And there's a lot of information here about the actual ceremony. I mean, the important part, to be honest, was all the negotiating, all of the conferences and the meetings going on for years, going on for decades. That was the important part of achieving independence. But of course, all of the attention gets put on Independence Day, the ceremony. And even the ceremony is a little bit complicated. I say it was complicated because, in fact, just as there are two Independence Days, there were two ceremonies. One took place at midnight. That was the one that took place at Merdeka Square. There was a dramatic ceremony. I believe they turned off all the lights for 1 minute. So basically, like today, August 30th, was the last day of the British colony. And then August 31st, tomorrow, was their first day as an independent country. So at like midnight today, like August 30th at midnight, lots of people gathered at the Merdeka Square, and I believe right at midnight they turned off all the lights, so it was pitch black. And then at 12:01, or maybe they did at 11:59, turned out all the lights, so everyone's in the darkness. And then at the stroke of midnight, the lights came on, and the Union Jack, the flag of the British Empire, was lowered, and the brand new flag of the independent country of Malaya, the Federation of Malaya, was raised on a flagpole at Merdeka Square. So that took place at midnight. That was one ceremony. That was the official minute that Malaysia became an independent country. But the Declaration of Independence didn't happen until 10 a.m., and that took place at Merdeka Stadium. So at Merdeka Stadium, Tunku Abdul Rahman gave a speech. The Declaration of Independence was read. There were 20,000 people there, dignitaries and leaders from all over the world. And that's when Tunku made his famous speech, and he shouted Merdeka 7 times. And that was a second ceremony. So you see what I mean? People often get confused. They talk about how they get mixed up when they talk about the ceremony, because there were in fact 2 of them. There was the official minute at midnight when the flag was raised at Merdeka Square, and then at 10 a.m. the same day, they had the much bigger, more official ceremony at Merdeka Stadium. So I'm not a historian or a student of politics in any way. I barely pay attention to the news when it comes to politics, but I do find this place fascinating. It's one of my favorite places in Malaysia and in Kuala Lumpur, this collection of memorials. It's such a beautiful place. High up on a hill, you get a beautiful view of some hilly areas here, and then you can climb up higher and see a lot of the city. And then you've got the memorial building over here, and then this is the residence of the Prime Minister. And then here they have the actual Proclamation of Independence is on display here, and you can read it for yourself. So I want to go into the main entrance. I came at the building this time from an unusual point of view, but I think I have to go all the way down there, and that would be the main entrance down there at the bottom, and then you sort of climb your way upwards. So that is what I'm going to do now. As I said, I've been here before, and I shot quite a detailed video containing all of the information about these cars and all the displays on the inside. So I'm not going to do all that today, but yeah, just record a little bit on video. You can get a sense of what this place is like. And then, yeah, love these cars. They're absolutely gorgeous. The luxury of cars back in those days. In terms, like just the luxury of how big they could be with the big tail wings and the lights. They look almost like airplanes that could take off. And this is the official entrance way down on the main floor. This is what the entrance looks like. And you sign in over here. And then this is the beginning of the memorial right here. One thing I really like about Malaysia's story is that the father of the country, Tunku, is called the Tunku. And that feels like a little bit of whimsy that their national hero who achieved independence and was the first prime minister has kind of a nickname in a way. People are quite fond of him, and he's known as the Tunku. So like you see it written out here. The Tunku was vocal in his voice and demanding independence. I just like that. It's a very friendly, informal touch. A little, as I said, a little piece of whimsy in Malaysian history. And I'm not even going to stop to read everything because I've already read everything here, probably twice. And there's a good picture of the man himself. I said I wasn't going to read everything, but I can't help it, and I'm busy reading through all of this again. And I noticed right away there's one section here that is echoing what I was talking about. And this section refers to, like right at the very top, it says, the British loss to the Japanese in the Second World War proved that Western powers could be defeated. And that's, yeah, a combination of World War II and the Japanese takeover of most or much of Asia. And I read a lot of these boards as well. And the main takeaway for me from these boards is a sense of just how complicated this process was. I mean, for a country to celebrate its independence, it kind of needs a simple, straightforward story. And yet, when you really dive into the details, it was far from simple. There were so many stages, so many different political organizations, everything from UMNO, formed on May 11th, 1946. And then again, this whole section here is talking about how the British returned to the country in 1945 after World War II, and they just basically wanted to take over again and just pick up where they left off. And they created what they called the Malayan Union with a new constitution, but the local people, the Malay rulers, hated that idea and fought against it, and that was removed. And there was another agreement in 1948 and another one, and then this organization merged with that organization, and then a whole bunch of them came together and formed a new organization. And of course, in Malaysia, you're talking about the three major groups, the Malays, the Chinese, and the Indian. And of course, they all had voices in the government. So now you've got the Malayan Chinese Association, and they had their own interests and negotiations and their own political parties. And so it was a very long, complicated, multi-stage process that finally led to 1957 and Independence Day. It's not as simple as you might want it to be, but yeah, it's just normal life. This is how things work. And if you want to get all of your dates straight, you also have to remember this date, February 20th, 1956, because that was the beginning of the process, really, because on February 20th, that's when, like, the delegation that went to London to negotiate for independence, and they succeeded, and then they came back to Malaya, and then they announced the date. Up until that point, nobody knew when it was going to happen, but then they came back and said Malaya would achieve its independence on 31st of August, 1957. So on February 20th, there was a big celebration and formal announcement of that. So all these pictures here were taken on February 20th. I think this happened in Malacca, where they announced the official date of independence. And these are all pictures of that ceremony and that celebration. And then, so that's a very important date in Malaysia as well, February 20th, 1956. Yeah, here they call it the reception for the Merdeka team at the Padang, Banda Hilir, Malacca. And I think Padang means a field. So it was like a big open field right here where they had, I think back in there, they said there were 100,000 people in attendance. I don't know if there were really that many, but there was a big motorcade with motorcycle escorts, and then a big ceremony, big celebration. So yeah, that's the date you really have to start, February 20th, 56. And then there was even another ceremony, because they had to sign the agreement, and that took place on August 5th, 1957. So it was a very simple ceremony, they say, and this photo was taken at that ceremony where the agreement was officially signed, August 5th, and then you move on towards the August 31st flag-raising ceremony at Merdeka Square, and then, so these pictures were taken there, and this is like the moment of independence, sharp at 12 midnight before the dawn of August 31st. So the flag of the British Empire was lowered, and the new flag of independent Malaya, the Federation of Malaya, was raised. And that's the government building at Merdeka Square. There's the crowd waiting for midnight. And then after the midnight flag-raising ceremony, then they had the huge event at the stadium. And here we are here, 20,000 people there. And the declaration, the proclamation of independence was read and witnessed by 20,000 people. And here is, I believe this is the Tunku shouting Merdeka 7 times. And of course, Merdeka, if I haven't said that already, means independence in Malay. And then the cabinet was formed, the new government. That first exhibit I went through was all about the official independence movement. And the next gallery is all about the Tunku himself, his life, education, youth. And again, I've talked about all of this in my other videos, so I'm not going to go over every display. But again, yeah, you just basically see his life on display, the sports teams, trophies that he won, and his hobbies. Apparently he was very into videography and photography. You see a lot of cameras and things like that. Swimming. Apparently he was a great swimmer, also loved to play golf, apparently. But yeah, you can go through this whole exhibit and see a lot of photographs of the man's life. And of course his wife and family, things like that, all that information is here. And if that weren't enough, there's another display. I think a lot of people come here not realizing that there's an entirely separate level way up here at the top. You go up these huge staircases, and then there's more displays up here. Yeah, it's worth going up just to see the staircase and the architecture of this building. And if I remember right, a lot of the display up here is about the Tunku's life after he was no longer in politics. He was still very active with newspapers and writing and things like that. So he was an active member of Malaysia's community, even after he was no longer the Prime Minister. And this is the display up here, as I said, that talks about the rest of the Tunku's life. And quite an interesting display here about Tunku and the Star, his life as a journalist and a writer, the books and the columns and the articles that he wrote. I don't know if a man's life has ever been as well documented as this man's. There is so much dedicated to him. And in fact, I think I'm going to visit another building, because when I was here last time, I think it was closed, and that's the official residence. So I think I can exit here. Yeah, these doors are open. And then this building, I already pointed it out. This was the official residence for the British leader and for the Malaysian Prime Minister. But when I visited before, it was always closed. But I think I saw the door open, so I'm going to take a look inside. This was basically the official home. I'm inside the official residence now and walking through some of the rooms. This was a room where they would meet with foreign dignitaries. Yeah, beautiful room. They call it the Cairo room, according to the sign. hardly need an explanation here. A dining room, official dining room, I assume, for foreign meeting dignitaries and guests having meals together. Simpler dining area and maybe kitchen cooking area. Oh, it's nice in here. I like it. Feels like a very friendly place. Yeah. Not sure if these stairs are open. We'll find out. Yeah. Ah, cool. Yeah, you're just free to roam around inside the house. Beautiful handrail. Bedrooms. Wow, spacious, very nice. You have a veranda going all the way outside this room. 1, 2, 3, 5 sets of doors leading out to the veranda. Similar single bedroom here. And I guess if you are the Tunku and his family, you need a lot of clothing. So you need a lot of wardrobes for all of your events you have to attend. I like this building. I like it a lot. It doesn't have an overwhelming, officious feeling to it. It feels like a comfortable place to live. Very large rooms. And even this room here, according to the label, is where like a visiting ambassador would stay. So this is a guest room. And I just like it that it's so unpretentious. You're a visiting ambassador and you sleep in a single bed like that, which is no different from any of the single beds I sleep on in all of my low-budget hotel rooms. Right? Yeah, it's just a very, very simple style of living. I like that. And yet also quite spacious. If you have even kids, a lot of room here to run around. And I love all those doors leading out to the veranda that seems to go around the entire building. I assume this is a private, mashallah, a prayer room. Very nice. And I think the doors out to the veranda are all closed, unlocked, but you can see it there. Very nice. I'm glad I got to see the inside, and I didn't get to see this last time I was here. Back down a different staircase. I just stumbled across this room on the outside, and this is the Tunku's private office. Yeah, I didn't see it from the inside. Love that desk. Love it. Look at that. The curve. Entirely wood. I do have plans to eventually visit this memorial. This is the National Memorial, and I didn't have enough time to go there in the past, and today as well I don't think I'll be going in there. I'll save that for another day. And this is the memorial Tun Hussein On, and I went inside there in the past, so you can see all of that in my previous video if you look for it on my channel. So I'm not going in there today. I really just wanted to revisit the Tunku's residence and memorial, just to get a refresher on the independence movement. But a fascinating thing about the design of this building is that you can go onto the roof. You can climb up these stairs here, and there's like a grassy platform built onto the roof of this building, and you get a nice view of Kuala Lumpur from up there. Perfect day to come out here. Beautiful day. So you can see we're climbing up a bit higher, and you get to see more and more of the skyline of Kuala Lumpur. And they have grassy areas here on the way up. Here's the very top. Petronas Towers on full display. Merdeka 118. I can't help but wonder what the Tunku would think to come up here today. Now that I think back, I can't quite remember how long he lived and how much he saw Malaysia develop and grow economically and as a nation. So if he came up here to this rooftop today and saw this massive display of skyscrapers, all shapes and sizes, what would he think of that? He would have some thoughts, I'm sure. And just down below me here, this is the residence. And that was the original building here. I think in 1994, the residence was turned into a memorial. So it was decided to preserve the house, and then later on they added the memorial, I think in 1994, and then they added this memorial and the others, and it just sort of grew into quite a fascinating place. Well worth visiting if you come to Malaysia and you don't know much about the place. A trip here would teach you a lot, and there's still a lot more I don't know because, as I said, I haven't been inside the Negarawan Memorial. So there's probably a lot more information there about the modern history of Malaysia. But beautiful from up here. A lot of flags on display, of course, for Independence Day tomorrow. I have to admit, I would sometimes get confused about the dates for Malaysian independence because there's that flag raising ceremony at midnight, and then they always say, midnight on August 31st. So for me, that means midnight on August 31st. So the first day of independence would be September 1st. But in fact, it's a weird thing in English where midnight is actually considered the beginning of the next day. So in fact, in my mind, if I'm speaking casually, the flag raising ceremony took place on August 30th, not the 31st. So midnight tonight is when the flag raising ceremony would have taken place. And then tomorrow, August 31st, that's when they had the big ceremony at 10 a.m. So August 31st is Independence Day, and the ceremony was at midnight on August 30th, technically. See what I mean? So I always got confused about that. But yeah. Heading back to the LRT station. I'm back at the bridge. Train just went by, but I just missed it. Just have to cross the highway system, get back into the LRT. When I was thinking about Malaysia's Independence Day, the Hari Merdeka celebrations tomorrow, I was thinking that for me, the idea of the independence starts with the Tunku. I like to associate historical events with people. It helps me to understand it better, to think of the people that were involved. And I think the independence movement started and ended with that man, the Tunku. And so I started my tour there. And right now I realized I'm just a short distance away from Merdeka Square. So as part of my Independence Day tour, I thought I'd walk the half a kilometer down to Merdeka Square, because that is the next most important point for Independence Day. In fact, this area near Merdeka Square and the government building, that was the focus point for independence celebrations for a long time. This is where you would come back in the older days to see the big parade until they moved it to Putrajaya. So it's fitting to come here today. And we're just about there at Merdeka Square, just on the outskirts here. The main government building, which you can see right there, is all being renovated. So the whole thing is covered up with tarps. It's all being renovated. And as we get past these couple of trees here, we should see the famous flagpole to mark where the independence celebrations took place at midnight tonight. I think at the time this flagpole was, I forget now, like the tallest in the world, tallest in Southeast Asia, something like that. But in any event, you can see it's very, very large, very tall. And to be honest, I don't know if any celebrations take place here at all. I mean, the main parade has been moved to Putrajaya, but you think something would still happen in Kuala Lumpur. And right now, yeah, we've got all these food trucks lined up. And I think a cold drink is in my future at one of these places for sure. Yeah, at the time, of course, it wasn't called Merdeka Square because Merdeka hadn't taken place yet. As far as I know, it was simply called Padang, meaning field. And this is the, what's that building? It's like a Selangor sports building of some kind, for cricket maybe, something like that. And then this field was used for, yeah, cricket and other sports. And it was simply called the field, Padang. So here we are, Merdeka Square, where it all took place. Flag of the Union Jack lowered and the flag of Malaysia raised. Yeah, something must be happening here tonight and tomorrow. Ceremonies. We got a stage set up over there. Most nights, especially on the weekend, lots of people here with their families when it's nice and cool, just enjoying the grass as a picnic area. And you can rent electric scooters and bikes and zip up and down this area. Yeah, let's go in search of a cold drink. My eye was attracted to this big display of a shake. So this is where I'm going to get some kind of a fruit shake.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
So I'm looking for a fruit shake of some kind.
Shake, coconut shake, mango shake.
Could I get a mango?
Mango shake.
Yes, please.
One.
Yeah, just one for me.
Okay.
Look at that lineup of blenders. They are prepared. Check out all these fresh coconuts ready for tonight when all the crowds come out. So I am in heaven. Look at that mango shake with ice cream and even slices of fresh mango on the top. And you get a straw and a spoon. So there's the food truck behind me where I got my mango shake. I was being so greedy. I took 2 long pulls on it. I drank so fast, I froze my chest. You know that chest freeze you get? It's like, it's almost like a heart attack. It feels like a chest cramp. It's not like a head freeze, but a chest freeze. I gotta slow down, let my chest warm up a bit. Wow. So yeah, a lot going on here tonight, so I'm gonna have to come back to see some of the celebrations. Comfort food galore. We got waffles, breaded chicken, coconut shakes, big chicken burgers and beef burgers, more shakes, on and on and on. They know the way to a Malaysian's heart. There's lots of good food. Two more stops on this afternoon's Merdeka tour. One is right on the MRT line, because today there's actually a station called Merdeka Station, and it's right across the road from Merdeka Stadium, where the formal proclamation of independence was read and everything became celebrated and official. So I'm just going to head to the stadium itself. As far as I know, you can't go inside or anything. I don't even know if I can see it, but I can be at the stadium where all of that took place. Just got to hop into the MRT system.
Offering a seat to pregnant women, senior citizens, and disabled persons.
Arrived at Merdeka Station. It was actually only one stop away from Pasar Seni, but I'm sort of on my way to Bukit Bintang anyway, and this place is like right on the way to Bukit Bintang. So I thought I'd just pop outside. And again, I don't think I can see Merdeka Stadium when I get out onto the sidewalk, but at least I will be beside it. And again, I keep thinking of this from the point of view of the Tunku. Like even this MRT line would not have existed in Tunku's day. Can you imagine what he would think if he could see this MRT line? It's such an impressive thing. And of course, they have it all decorated with the flags for Independence Day. In fact, I think there are two stadiums here. There's Stadium Negara, and might be able to see the outside of that one, but that's not the one that I'm thinking of. The historic one is on the other side of Stadium Negara, and that's, Stadium Merdeka. But as I said, it'll be enough just to stand on the sidewalk and be near it for my historic tour. And again, thinking of it from the point of view of the Tunku, can you imagine him coming out here, coming up this escalator and seeing what I'm about to see? My favorite building. And by favorite building, I mean Merdeka 118, right there. So I think this is the National Stadium right here, Stadium Negara, and then on the other side of this, on the other side of this complex, is Merdeka Stadium over there. So we can't see it, but yeah, back in 1957, 10 a.m., if you were standing here, you would have heard the shouts of 20,000 people at least, and you would have heard the Tunku saying, Merdeka, 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 Merdeka. 7 times. And if this were a good reenactment, you would have heard 20,000 people shouting Merdeka back at me 7 times every time I said. It was like a call and response from the Tunku, Merdeka, and the crowd shouted back, Merdeka, and 7 times.